Hello, hi historians, and welcome to your next lesson, which is Cold War Issue 1 essay writing. Now, this PowerPoint is going to help you with writing your essay for the Cold War Issue 1. Now, to start with, just a wee recap on the different types of questions you can be asked when it comes to essay writing. Now, questions that ask you to compare the importance of one specified factor compared to other relevant factors. These questions are often begin with to what extent or how important. So for example, to what extent was the Cold War caused by tensions within the wartime alliance? Now this is known as an isolated factor question, with your isolated factor there being the wartime alliance. Questions that ask you to make a judgment about a historical event. So questions of this kind might begin with how successful or how significant or how accurate is it to describe. So for example, how successfully did the Soviet Union control Eastern Europe in the years before 1961? Now remember, sometimes those questions can be phrased in the form of a statement. So for example, by 1928, Britain was a fully democratic country. How accurate is this view? Now, all the question types that you're being asked in higher history, you're being asked to argue about points and ultimately decide usually what factor was the most important or how successful did, say, the Labour government deal with the social issues facing people in Britain. So you're looking to argue about points, not simply just tell a story. Now for your essay marks, again, this is just all a recap, so we should know this already. Marks are awarded in your essay for 3 marks for your intro, 3 marks for your conclusion, 6 marks for KU, 6 marks for analysis. Remember, they're broken down to analysis and analysis plus 4 marks for your evaluation. Now for your knowledge and analysis, remember there's 6 separate marks for the 6 separate points and the other elements of that as a whole. And again, this just shows you here what you need to do to get your marks. So introduction worth 3, so remember you need to have background, you need to have a line of argument, and you need to have the factors. For your knowledge, you need to have 6 knowledge points throughout your essay. For your analysis, remember analysis plus throughout your essay as well. Evaluation, which is worth 4 marks, which we'll discuss in more detail in a bit. That's a judgment on the factor compared to other factors at the end of each paragraph. And then in your conclusion, to get your 3 marks, you need to summarise factors, make a final judgment, and give evidence to support this judgment. Now remember, for your marks, if you get 16 out of 22, anything 16 or above, that's an A. 13 out of 22, that would be a B, so 13 to 15. 11 and 12 would get you a C, and 10 out of 22 would get you a D. Anything below 9 is a fail in an essay. Now, general rules for essay writing, obviously again we've went over all this already, but never write in the first person. So don't say I think that when you can argue, well clearly this evidence shows that. So try and avoid saying I think that the most important reason for the Cold War was. Try to use the phrase the evidence shows that, or clearly it's clear that. So try and avoid writing in the first person. Always try and write about the isolated factor first. Now you won't be marked down for this, but it's just good practice to try and write about the isolated factor first if it is an isolated factor essay. And remember that your essay is an extended argument and not a story. So refer clearly to the specific question that you're asked all the way through your essay. Don't leave your judgment as a surprise for the conclusion at the end, because remember, in your introduction you need to have a line of argument, so stick to that line of argument that you make in your introduction throughout your essay. Don't say, for example, in your introduction that you think tensions within the wartime alliance were the most important reason for the Cold War starting, and then in your conclusion you change your mind to ideological differences. Try and stick to the same argument throughout your essay. Now in terms of watching your time, and remember you're only meant to have 45 minutes to write your essay. Now obviously you're doing this at home, which is slightly different, but try and make sure you're not spending any longer than 45 minutes when you're actually writing it. Now it should be possible to hopefully write around about 3 sides of A4 in the given time. Again, because you're doing this at home, you will probably type up your essay. Now many people like to spend a minute or so writing a very quick plan of what to do before you go on and write your essay. Obviously this PowerPoint is hopefully acting as a bit of a plan for you when it comes to writing this up. And it's a very common mistake to spend far too much time on your introduction and the first part of your essay, even when you are writing it from home. So make sure that you try and stick to the time in terms of you shouldn't really be taking any longer than 3 or 4 minutes for your introduction, then you're on to your first paragraph after that. And whatever you do, always make sure you leave time for a conclusion. Again, because you're doing this from home, you should make sure that your essay is fully complete. Now your essay question which you're going to answer for this week is: the main reasons for the emergence of the Cold War by the 1950s was tensions within the wartime alliance. How valid is this view? 22 marks. So the question here is saying, well, the main reason for the emergence of the Cold War by the 1950s was tensions within the wartime alliance, so that's a factor that you need to discuss first. How valid is this view? So do you agree or do you disagree with that? If you think it is tensions within the wartime alliance, which was the most important reason for the emergence of the Cold War, then you're also going to argue that in your essay, and you'd be arguing that the view in the question is valid. If you think it is a different factor, like ideological differences for example, then you're also going to argue that the view in the question is invalid. Now, the factors that you can discuss in this essay. You also have tensions within the wartime alliance, which is in the question. You've got the crisis over Korea. You have disagreements over the future of Germany, ideological differences, and the arms race. So that's the 5 factors that you can write about. Also, tensions within the wartime alliance is in the question, so you need to write about that. Then you choose the other 4 which you would like to write about. The other 3 which you would like to write about. Now, just to go over your introduction. So remember, for your introductions, what you need to include. Your introduction should be to the point. So read the question carefully and be sure you know what you're being asked to write about. Now, your introduction should put the essay into context, so you should have some background. You should signpost the key issues and factors that you're going to discuss in your essay. And you should ultimately address the question, give an idea of where your argument is going, so you should have a line of argument. Now, a good way to remember how to write an introduction is B, so background, L, line of argument, and O, other factors that you're going to discuss. Now, for your introduction, you can use your notes, the previous slides which we've just discussed, and the template below to help you to write an introduction for your essay. So this template below says, after the Second World War, the Allies, Britain, France, USA and Russia had emerged victorious. However, there were tensions in the wartime alliance, particularly between the USA and Russia. Instead of trying to solve these tensions, both sides started to mistrust and betray each other, and by the 1950s they were involved in a Cold War. There is no doubt tensions in the wartime alliance were a fairly important reason for the emergence of the Cold War, because it started off the distrust and suspicion between both sides. However, there were other key factors for the start of the Cold War, and you have obviously blank spaces there, so you decide which 3 factors you want to discuss. Yet, blank, and you choose what you think is the most important reason for the Cold War starting. Now, the main body of your essay. Remember, once you've done your introduction, it's now down to you to develop your key factors here. So what you're looking to do in the main body of your essay is not write down everything you know about the topic. You're looking to present a well-balanced, clearly structured argument where you evaluate the issues. Now, in the main body of your essay, you should aim to have a key factor sentence to start off, so the factor sentence, topic sentence to introduce your factor. Develop the factor, so give us some KU, and make sure you include analysis and evaluation in your main body as well. So remember, ways to remember what to include in your paragraph. So when you're writing your main section, you should let FIDO help you do it properly. So FIDO stands for, I'll say, factor, so state the factor you're going to discuss. Information, so give us a fact. Debate, so explain why this issue is important or why it's maybe not as important. And then overall, say how important the factor is when compared to other factors, so your evaluation. So remember, topic sentence, KU, analysis, then for a Cold War essay, KU, analysis, analysis plus, and evaluation. Now, I know usually even in the British essays we usually aim for KU, analysis, analysis plus, KU, analysis, analysis plus. For the Cold War, in particular this part of the Cold War here, all the factors did contribute to the Cold War starting. Your analysis plus, you mean to argue maybe why they weren't as important. So you can just include 1 analysis plus per paragraph. Now, your evaluation. At the end of every paragraph, an evaluation of the factor and its importance against your chosen most important factor should take place. Now, evaluations are very difficult, as we've discussed, okay, so it may take a while for you to become really good at doing these. I know that we have obviously worked on the British essay, but please don't worry if you're still struggling with evaluation. It is a very difficult part of the essay. Now, how to complete an evaluation of a factor that is not the most important factor, so not the most pivotal or decisive factor. So to evaluate factors that are not the pivotal factor, you should try and use the following formula as we've discussed before. So in evaluation, so let's say you're saying in evaluation, tensions within the wartime alliance is important because, so try and summarise your analysis point there maybe. So why do you feel it's maybe quite important? However, it is not as important as, you may say for example, however, it is not as important as ideological differences because, and try and give a reason there that connects both the points and also arguing why you feel ideological differences is the most important. Now, for example, if the factor of the paragraph is say the arms race and you're arguing the most important is ideological differences, then here's how your evaluation might look. So we have here, In evaluation, the arms race is important in the emergence of the Cold War because whilst each side was trying to outdo the other in terms of weapons production and new technology, they became increasingly competitive and aggressive, leading to more tension. However, the arms race was not as important as ideological factors because if it was not for the tension already there between the two sides about who had the better political and economic system, then they wouldn't be trying to outdo each other in weapons production to demonstrate whose side was stronger, such as when the Russians were the first to develop the hydrogen bomb to show how superior their ideological system was. Now, new evidence which you've maybe brought in for your evaluation is underlined there, where it mentions the Russians were the first to develop the hydrogen bomb. Now, for this evaluation here, you'll see you've said at the start why the arms race was important, you've given a reason for that, but you've argued that the arms race wasn't as important as ideological differences, and then you've given a reason why ideological differences is more important than the arms race. So that's an example there. Now, how to complete an evaluation when the most important factor is the one that you're writing about. So the evaluation of the pivotal most important factor uses a similar formula to the one that we've just discussed there, in that you're evaluating why it is more important and saying why it's more important than the other factors. So what you'd be looking to say in evaluation, so let's say again you're saying in evaluation ideological differences is important because it is more important than all the other factors because, and try and give a reason why it's more important than your other factors. So in this example, you'll see here the most important is ideological differences. So it says, in evaluation, ideological factors are very important in the emergence of the Cold War because each side was committed to outdoing the other to show which system was better, which led to more tension, suspicion and polarising of the former allies. This factor is the most important compared to others because it underpins the competitive nature of all other factors. Even during the wartime alliance, the two sides competed over who could defeat Germany first, such as who could get to Berlin first. The arms race started because the US wanted to outdo Russia by demonstrating the atomic bomb first. The disagreements over Germany stemmed from the inability to compromise due to their opposite ideological needs, and even the Korean War was fought over ideological differences and to prove which side was better. Now again, examples of new evidence that you might have brought in are underlined, so you don't have to have new evidence in every other factor. At least one piece of evidence that has not already appeared in the paragraph is enough. Now you can see here that ideological differences has been compared to all the other factors and they're mentioned in bold. Now you could get away with just having maybe two factors compared to your most important when you're doing the most important evaluation. So that is an example there that you can use. Now, evaluation examples, so if you're arguing that ideology was the most important, you have templates here to use for Korea, tension within the wartime alliance, disagreements over Germany and the arms race. So you'll see here you've got the template where it's saying in evaluation the crisis in Korea was fairly important in the midst of the Cold War because, so you're given a reason there. However, ideology was more important to start the Cold War because, and then you're given a reason there. So you can use this template to help you. Now this is if you're arguing that ideological differences was the most important. You may disagree with that and think it was a different factor that was the most important. That is totally fine. But use these templates here to help you with that. Now, the last part of your essay is your conclusion. So what you're looking to do in your conclusion is also answer the question. You're looking to give a reason for your answer. So because balance, you're looking to mention other factors and your overall argument at the end. Now, use the example on the next slide to help you with your conclusion. So what you have here. In conclusion, blank was the main reason for the emergence of the Cold War by the 1950s because this makes the view in the question valid/invalid. So again, if you are arguing, for example, in conclusion, ideological differences was the main reason for the emergence of the Cold War by the 1950s because, give a reason there, this makes the view in the question invalid because obviously the view in the question was saying that it was disagreements in the wartime alliance. Although blank, so although another factor was important in the emergence of the Cold War because, give a reason there, but it wasn't as important as, and then go back to your most important factor because. Blank was also important in the emergence of the Cold War because, so again mention another factor there, but it wasn't as important as your most important factor because. Now, when you're giving your balance points there, try not again just to go and repeat, say, your evaluation that you've done. Try and just summarise, yes, here's why it is quite important, but here's why it's not as important as my most important factor. And then finishing your conclusion overall at the end. So therefore, blank must be considered the most important reason for the Menace for the Cold War, because so that's really your cherry on top of the cake at the end there. So go back to your most important reason, really hammer home the reason why it is the most important reason for the Cold War starting. Now, over to you. What you're looking to do is to use your notes which you've gathered last week, when you've got paragraphs and you've got notes for each of the factors, and use this PowerPoint to help you. Now what you're looking to do is to upload your completed essay by Friday the 22nd of January via the assignment tab on Microsoft Teams. If you have any questions about the essay at all, then just let obviously myself and Mrs. Forte know. Use the work that you've done last week to help you. Okay, so you've got an introduction template within this PowerPoint to use. You've got your paragraph written from last week to use, so it would just be the evaluation at the end that you need to add in. So again, use the information on evaluation in this PowerPoint to help you with that, and then your conclusion at the end as well. Thank you very much.